Hi, everyone. Welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thanks very much for joining us today. My name's Christian. I'm the founder at Core Recruitment. We're an international recruitment company, and we deal at mid to senior level across exec and non-exec appointments. Now, we're running this interview series and we're meeting lots of different business founders, directors, investors, different people who are involved across the sectors that we operate in. And they're sharing some ideas about positivity, things that they should be doing, best practice, kind of like across the different markets that they operate within. Now, you can see all of these interviews on our website, which is www.corerecruitment.com, or you can watch them on YouTube, or you can listen to them on Spotify. So we've got all bases covered for you. Now, we're meeting today with Chris Henry. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Yes, yeah, all very good. Thank you very much. Bit Truman Show there. But to get us kicked off, for those who don't know a lot about Majestic Hospitality, can you tell us a little bit about the business, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a 18-year-old company that is headquartered in Los Angeles, and we have some other offices, both domestic and international. But we do two things. We're both a development company as well as an advisory firm, but specifically working in the boutique and lifestyle sector of the industry.
Nice. And to get an idea of some of the work and some of the clients you've worked with over the past 18 years, can you share kind of like some information?
So we're actively, for example, working on a project with Hoshino Resorts out of Japan at the moment. We're actively working on a project with Anantara at the moment. And then we've also done just smaller, independent, completely boutique hotels. We have one in LA called Hotel. Uh, Give you that. I'm just blanked on my own project name. Uh, Ellison. Geez.
We can edit
So
that out. Don't worry, don't worry.
yeah, and the Ellison in Venice Beach, in California. To we did also in Italy a project called Villa Ardore. So we've done a lot of very cool things over the years.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. So just in terms of like the origin story of the business and how you came to kind of set it up, can you give us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, it's a great story. So it was one of those right place, right time, but it had a few bumps. Actually, I was still in college when it started. A family friend approached me and a colleague of mine at Four Seasons and said, I'm building a hotel in Bali and we need somebody to go over there and set it up and manage the construction and then run the property for us. And my friend and I being, you know, 21 at the time, we're both like, absolutely, count us in. And we both asked our mentors at Four Seasons and like, should we do this? And they said, take it and run. And we did. What we didn't expect though was about 4 months later that the 2008 crash would happen.
Oh no.
And so it hit a bump, such as life, but it teed us up to eventually start taking on advisory and development projects. It gave us sort of the experience and the tools to continue pushing that forward. And when the company finally really got its feet under itself in 2011, um, our first project out of the gate starting to work on was a large scale mountain resort project, 2,000-acre project. Um, and it was to be the world's first mountain biking resort. So it gave us a lot of great avenues, but we had to build it very organically just because of when it started and what was happening in the world at that time. But yeah, I started my career at Four Seasons, got this opportunity to work in Bali. Crash happened, went and ended up working for a company called Cebu Prince. At the time, it was just Prince Hotels out of Japan, worked for their Hawaii division. And working with them, finishing renovations and getting new projects started is eventually when I broke off and got Majestic really with its feet under itself. We're like, okay, we're going to take a run at this. And we haven't looked back. I think the one other piece I'll put in there is, three-quarters of what we do are international projects.
Yeah.
And the reason that is that when we were starting out, we had to go wherever the work was. And we couldn't just say, oh, we're only going to work in LA or we're only going to work in the States. It's where can we find work? Where can we get a job? And becoming international had to be our backbone to do that at the time. And it's still our mainstay today.
Excellent. Now, I mean, a lot of people dream of starting their own consultancies, their own businesses, that kind of like entrepreneurial flair and winning those clients. And I mean, the clients that you're talking about, like, working with, are on the wish list for kind of like, absolutely everybody. If there were people watching this who would love to emulate what you've kind of done, like, Is it networking? Is it referrals? How would you say that kind of like, you develop that?
Yeah, I think both, to be honest. Networking is a huge part of this. The industry is very relationship driven and relationship based. So uh, going to conferences and events, building out your Rolodex and continuing to nurture those relationships is very important. At the same time, I believe also equally important for us is learning how to be adaptable to the situations. I think some people have a hard time getting outside of their box, and what we've realized and what's made us successful is that we adapt to the local culture, the local place, the way of doing business wherever we're doing our projects. So being flexible and nimble is incredibly important. And then lastly, sort of circles back, is that you also never want to burn a bridge in this industry. It is too small. Circles overlap very quickly. Um, so you do even if it's somebody you don't particularly like, you do have to learn also how to smile and shake hands and find a way to keep moving forward. So those are my sort of key recommendations to
Uh,
people.
Excellent. Now, the ISHC, you were its youngest ever inductee. You grew up in a Mexican American household in Western LA, and I think to date, if I'm wrong in your bio, but it's 65 countries that you visited so far, which is pretty impressive. How's that shaped the kind of like consultancy that you have today?
Well, I think to take the first part of that was ISHC. That was definitely a distinct honor. I was 28 at the time when one of the ISHC members approached me and said, we think you should be part of the organization. We want to nominate you. And I was definitely put through a rigorous, I think almost like 2 year like vetting process. And it's been absolutely worth it. It has opened both network, it's opened additional opportunities to share our thought process and brain trust as well as learn from others. And also just a good sort of collegial atmosphere. So ISHC has been fantastic. And I'm now on the board of directors for that. So that was took a few years, but I'm flattered to be doing that. So, from there, growing up Mexican American, it's that's sort of a hard question to answer because where I grew up in LA is fairly waspy, I'll put it that way. Fairly white, fairly, upper middle class family area, and definitely being like one of the darker, you know, kids at school is again, you sort of still have to learn to adapt and survive. And I think it just opens your mind a little bit more to how to plug in places. Um, and that then led on to uh, the travel, and I enjoy travel both for work and for a lot of fun. I do a lot of adventure travel on the side, but I think one of the most important skills I ever learned, um, this is gonna sound weird actually. I've never really shared this before. Uh, I think one of the people who taught me the most about how to adapt and survive of all people was actually my family, sort of like housekeeper nanny growing up. Um, and you know, because we didn't speak the same language um, fluently with each other, we sometimes had to learn how to interpret what each other was trying to say and trying to learn to read situations and stuff. And that's a skill I've taken out into the world with me. And I've been in some far-flung places in a language I don't know, but I can figure out the situation based on the just reading the cues and signals. And it's in a weird way become a very powerful tool, and I'm incredibly grateful. Her name's Cora, to Cora for giving me that skill because it's not something I think you would normally have to learn to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Love that. Now, running your own company and running your own boutique kind of like firm means that you're all over the world all the time. And the anything like recruitment, it's kind of like your business development, business development, business development, then suddenly three projects come along all at once. And like, how do you manage capacities and how do you prioritize?
So it's funny you say that because we're dealing with that right now. A couple of things that helps is domestically, we've got three offices at the moment. We have LA, Dallas, and Miami. The LA office, which I run and is also our headquarters, we oversee our projects in the Western US and then Asia Pacific region, so call it like that. And our Miami office oversees Eastern US and Latin America and Caribbean. So for the Western Hemisphere, that's sort of how we've broken things up. We did recently open an office in Italy,
Mm.
really focused on inbound capital to the Italian market from the States and Britain, helping those particularly high net worth individuals who are looking to do these sort of trophy projects. Um, we are trying to use that office also as a springboard now to grow our presence even further in Europe and into Africa. And we've been in talks to open offices in Singapore and Cape Town to give us additional
Wow.
reach. So I think this year in particular has been a strategic planning growth year for us. Specifically to your point of we have stuff everywhere, and we need to be able to serve our clients like instantaneously. And I think that's actually one of those things that got instilled at me from starting my career at Four Seasons is, hospitality is a 24/7 industry, and I do try to treat our clients like guests and get their requests, addressed immediately. Um, but yeah, to handle that, we are growing and opening additional offices. But yes, I live on airplanes, and it drives my better half crazy.
Wow. And in terms of the global climate kind of like of late, there's definitely kind of like, some heat spots in the world at the moment, right? Like how have you been weathering that? Kind of like it doesn't sound like it slowed you guys down at all, right?
So, it's interesting and I got to take a step back on the timeline here. So going into the pandemic, we were running at 110% full capacity. We had a blip like everybody else in 2020, slow down. 21 through midway of 23, we were back up to full steam. It's actually been interesting on the development side that mid 23 to about summer 2025 was pretty much flat in the development world. There wasn't a ton going on. And we felt it, and as did a lot of our friends and peers at other companies. Um, Last summer to about March this year, it was 110% again, and now we're back to being a little quieter on the pipeline since the war in Iran started, which is a bit embarrassing that well, we won't get into the politics, but sorry to everybody what we've done, my fellow countrymen, which is sad to say. Um, but we're chugging along. We're actually doing quite well. We are particularly active in Japan at the moment. We have 4 projects that we're leading that are under development, as well as a project in Central America, and one in the Caribbean, and one in upstate New York right now. So we're pretty busy. But like everybody, we like to see a full pipeline of incoming stuff as well. And it's been a little quiet. So we just have to keep adapting and lean on our international strategy. And we put resources into markets that are busy, and we take resources out of markets that are quiet. So to be honest, last year we actually moved 100% of our marketing budget out of the US. We do no active marketing in the US currently. We diverted that all to foreign markets. When things politically calm back down here and the market picks up, we'll bring it back. But for the moment, we're focused elsewhere.
Understood. Now, when it comes to client management on that side of things, you must deal with different owners, investors, hospitality groups, all of that kind of side of things as well, all wanting to create the beautiful commercial kind of thing. How are you balancing, or what rub are you seeing at the moment in terms of what makes the beautiful thing and what makes a sound financial bet? And what's the best way of you kind of influencing your stakeholders to strive towards that?
So I think the big thing right now is you really, especially for development projects, is you really need to establish your budget parameters right now up front and have them in a stress scenario and make sure your underwriting works. Because construction costs over the last 5 to 6 years have gone up astronomically for hotels, especially luxury hotels and resorts. We've been very surprised, and we've seen some clients who um, sort of underestimated on their internal underwriting of what they thought things would cost, and now they're recognizing, okay, this is a bigger issue. So I think one is being realistic. I think two is really understanding your guest profile and who your consumer is. I'm not a believer of if you build it, they will come. That strategy in boutique and lifestyle doesn't work. You really, in my opinion, need to focus on a target market, build a model around that market. And I sort of think of it as the think of it as a cake, and the breading on the inside is that core market. And you need to make sure that size is sustainable, that you're going to be able to cater those people. And if you get people from outside that group, that's even better. And that's the icing on the cake. So you really need to understand who your consumer is, build something that appeals to them. And if you get people from beyond that, you did a great job then. Um, so I think that's a second part. And then I also believe that people today are looking for a different kind of travel. They're looking for experiential travel. They want to get ingrained in a local place. So I think even if you're doing, like for us, lifestyle and boutique type projects, it needs to resonate with the community you're in, because that community is what's going to give your guest an amazing experience they're going to go and talk about with friends. So I think you need to factor that into what you're doing to be able to give that unique experience.
Excellent. Now, you're a founding member of the Latino Hotel Association. You're a very vocal advocate for LGBTQI kind of like, purposes as well in the workplace. In terms of that DEI kind of side of things, like, can you just give us a little bit about like the importance of that and like your domestic versus international kind of like approach to that as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think domestically, um, I think I've been very vocal publicly about where we stand on DEI initiatives. And, I understand that our current government doesn't want to support those initiatives. That is not a reason for us to walk away from them. So we've continued fully supporting openly various DEI initiatives, whether it be Latino Hotel Association, whether that be through LA Tourism with our LGBT groups, and elsewhere. We're pushing that along. One of the decisions I made on a personal level many years ago is, when I really was getting Majestic going, really trying to build out that network, I was very private and reserved um, about that side of my life. And it got to a point as in I just don't care anymore in the sense of if people know. It's actually worked out in the end. I actually end up doing a lot of business with other friends who are in the LGBT community because it's sort of there's a fraternal brotherhood kind of sense of that, and we'd rather work together and support each other than look to people who don't support our initiatives. So that's been something I've really been surprised about now that I'm older. And I think internationally we're still fairly vocal. It's funny, my better half is an archaeologist and works in Egypt. And so I'm in Egypt quite a bit. And um, you learn how to do the dance in places of yes, I am, but no, no, I'm not kind of situation. It's hard to describe, but at the same time, you never stop being your truthful and honest self. Um, you just have to learn how to tailor that to sometimes, a little bit more critical environments. But yeah, so we're loud and proud.
Now, you joined the ISMHC, obviously, that you were a member of kind of like, previously in 2025 and serving the LAA Tourism and Convention Board and the Latino Hotel Association as well. Just in terms of like, there's a lot of people who kind of like sit within their job roles and they're like, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that. I don't like, I don't want to make kind of like an active contribution. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you get from those kind of like organizations and what you contribute to them?
Yeah, so I think, LA Tourism, I got a phone call from the head of LA Tourism in the depths of the pandemic, and the George Floyd riots and protests were going on. And um, he was upfront about it. He's like, look, we've got a fairly undiverse group of board members, and we need fresh outside perspectives to help us better align with our community.
Hmm.
Um, is this something you'd like to be involved with? And I'm a very, very proud Angelino. It is my hometown, even though I've got the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco as my background here. Um, but the Hollywood sign wasn't an option on Zoom. But I'm a proud Angelino, proud Californian. There's nothing I would want to do more than to support my hometown. And given the crises that Los Angeles has been dealing with over the past few years, being involved with LA tourism has been probably one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life, to be honest. Um, and I do try to be very vocal there and not just kowtow to larger corporations. Like, here's the actual feeling on the ground. This is what people are saying and where we need to react. Same goes for Latino Hotel Association. Um, and I think with ISHC as well, I think that's one of the reasons why I was actually encouraged to run for the board is to help bring some of these outside and fresher perspectives. And I just don't mince my words, whether that be good or bad. The one other thing I always tell people now is being involved with a cause or being involved with supporting others needs to be a part of your life and needs to be something that you do regularly. In LA, about a year and a half ago, we had those really tragic fires that
Mm.
roared through the Palisades in Altadena. Um, and I was blown away by how the hospitality community stepped up to help fellow Angelinos. And whether that was opening rooms, giving out rooms for free, giving away, bedding for free, giving away food. The hotel industry stepped up. And we
Yeah.
as a company and as myself, we were donating. I spent a week on the working on the relief effort in the aftermath of the fire. You need to do those kind of things and to give back. I'm not religious, but I believe in karma, and I do believe the energy you put out in the world is the energy that eventually will also come back to you. Um, and we should be putting good energy out there and helping others is a key piece of that.
I completely agree. As somebody who's got the benefit of working with these government organizations and I guess also working internationally as well, in terms of things that governments, policy, regulation, industry misconceptions, like what do you think that, like the government in the UK or the government in the US or wherever, to stimulate growth, to kind of like have a good, vibrant, kind of like, functioning economy, what best practices have you seen kind of out there?
That's a great question. And actually, I think, to start with the US as the low-hanging fruit, excuse me, in that conversation is you need to be pro tourism. You need to be pro international travel. You need to be pro supporting small businesses. A lot of folks don't realize in the US that something like 70% of hotels are owned by families and they're running as small businesses. They're not owned by big corporations. These are people who, the kids grow up at the hotel. These are people who the whole family is involved. And they are the backbone of the actual industry in the US. Um, so I think promoting that is important. I think the US has also really hampered itself by the impacts to Brand USA, which is actually our federal level travel association. Obviously, with the sweeping Trump budget cuts, Brand USA got its budget cut, which then affected Visit California, which then affects LA tourism and all the other DMOs across the country. Um, International arrivals are down. Last year, I believe, it was something like 14% down nationally. And that's billions of dollars in economic growth. So A is we need to be able to promote travel. We need to be able to promote, the US as a welcoming, encouraging, safe place to come to. I've had the experience of being as a brown person with a beard and young. I've had the experience of being hauled out of line by ICE at the airport and getting interrogated. I've had that experience. I didn't like that as an American. I certainly don't want that to be an experience any foreign visitor has to our country. So it is, I think the policies here do need to change to continue supporting um, international arrivals in business. So that's for the US.
Yeah, I can just
I
stop you
think
for a second there. How, as an American citizen, how did that make you feel?
absolutely infuriated. So it was at LAX. I was actually boarding a flight to Istanbul, and I was only going to be in Istanbul for a day. It was a layover on my way to Egypt to see my partner. And, it was the same day that ICE had arrested a California senator. It was the same day that Kristi Noem was giving this really hot rhetoric speech. LAX was swarming with ICE agents. They were greeting arriving flights and interrogating departing flights. And I could see they were um, getting ready to start questioning us. And, I was in the early on in the line to board, and I've gone through two passport checks, like normal, scanned my boarding card. I'm getting ready to walk on the plane. And they walk over to me and essentially surrounded me sir, you need to come with us. We need to speak with you. And it became, okay, where are your documents? Where are your papers? Where are you going? Why are you going there? Who are you traveling with? And as I said, I'm not very good at not mincing my words. And I thought, look, if this goes bad, I need this to be in my brain. I was thinking this needs to be around a lot of other people. And you got 300 people boarding a plane. So I was like, I'm not moving from this spot. And I'm going to be loud because I want everybody else to hear what's going on. And that if something starts to happen, I'm hoping at least somebody of these 300 people on the plane will intervene. Um, and then it became, I got the weirdest question. And this is where I was like, they're desperately looking for something. Is they asked me, how much cash are you carrying? And I'm thinking, that's a bizarre question. Obviously, there's rules you can't travel with more than 10,000 in cash. Um, and like they're like, do you have cash on you? I'm like, and I was like, okay, this is where I'm gonna get them. This is how I'm gonna get them. It's like, yes, I do have cash on me. And the guy got to say, well, how much? And I was like, I have $4. Would you like them? And the guy actually threw my passport back at me. And he's like, go. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And I was like, and you really shouldn't just target people because they're brown. And um, I hear the guy yelling at me in the background as I'm walking on the plane. I was like, it's not about that, sir. We're just here doing our job. And I'm like, everybody I've seen you pull out is a brown person. So as a US citizen, they didn't care that I had a US passport. They didn't care uh, about that proof of citizenship. They were just trying to find reasons to arrest people who were brown. And they were using that as an excuse to get a conversation going. There's
That's
no
pretty
other reason.
scary, right?
It was scary, and it puts you in a really bad mood. I was pretty hopping mad when I got onto the plane, and the flight attendants had seen what happened, and one of them, a fellow gay, came over and said, "Do you need a drink?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." It's like I need to bring my uh, frustration down, but it's intense, and I don't wish it on anybody. And it was to be surrounded by people with machine guns is not an American way to do things. It's not something I'd ever seen in my country before, and it's not something I ever want to see in my country again. Um, and I can understand as I've lived in the UK and I've got a lot of friends there. I can understand why they didn't want to come visit, and they encouraged me to come there and visit instead, which I'm happy to do. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Um, it's unfortunate for me, but it's tragic to see how they've done it to other people and how it has ruined the lives of other people. And that's the hardest part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, coming back onto Majestic Hospitality, leaving the politics aside, in terms of your future hopes for the business, in terms of where you want to get it in the next 5 years, 10 years, like other than Italy, other than Singapore, what are the other aspirations for the business that you'd like to achieve?
So, we now that things are slowly picking back up again volume wise, and that there does seem to suddenly appear to be funding um, starting to move off the sidelines and start to become active again. We're really making a push to start our own development projects once again, which we've done in the past. We also do third-party fee development as in addition to our advisory work. But my big push right now is to um, get us some moving big scale development projects where we've got ownership stake in them. We're doing that in the Caribbean uh, right now. and hopefully we'll find some others to do. So that's my biggest thing, is that I would like to keep the consulting side of the business going, but take a little bit of a step back from it. We've got a great team who can do a lot of who can do all of the services that we offer. I don't need to be in all of those meetings anymore. I feel like we've gotten to that point where our machine runs and it's very finely tuned. Um, and my real passion is on the development side, so I want to get back into that uh, into that realm that sort of got sidetracked during the pandemic. So I think that's the biggest thing. And as we've grown our footprint, as you know, as you mentioned a moment ago, is getting these other offices open to continue supporting our clients elsewhere, in other markets. And then I think lastly, long term, like so many other hoteliers in the industry, um, is eventually we'd like to start operating, get our own brand and operating going.
Wow.
That's, I think, for my business partner and I think that's been both of our like dreams since childhood. We've been approached, if not probably over 2 dozen times, by different investors or clients or stuff about, hey, would you guys do this? And what Zach and I decided is we're not going to do it until we find the right partners to work with and it's the right situation. We're not in a rush. We have consciously made the decision to grow the company organically. We're not we don't want to be one of these companies that runs, grows, becomes everything overnight and then collapses. I've seen a
Mm,
lot of other people from our generation, the millennial generation, seem like they strike gold, become the darling of the industry, and then collapse a couple of years later. We don't want to be that. We've been offered opportunities to bring on big, investment partners and such and grow. We actively have chosen we don't want to do that. We want to organically, when the pieces come, when they're the right pieces, we'll integrate them into what we're doing.
excellent. Well, look, thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your story and about all of your global growth and some of the projects that you've worked on as well. It's really great to hear that you're doing so well and really thriving. And hopefully we'll see you at a very conference somewhere very cool very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Krishnan.